is extremely demanding, particularly for crane operators. One of the most difficult tasks is the unloading and backloading of supply boats. The operator often has to work in winds which affect the sea state, the crane, and the handling of the load. The loads can be 100 feet or more from the cab. Obstructions on the installation can make placing the loads difficult, and often they have to be picked up or set down outside the operator's field of vision.
Down on your line, dead slow, Pete.
In addition, there is often pressure to get vital loads off the supply boats before weather conditions break.
Post up.
Working at night is normal. Crane operators must stay alert throughout long shifts in the isolation of their cabs, always being aware of the men working around them. Not only must they be skillful, operators need to know the limits of their cranes and to have full knowledge of their company rules and procedures. Three factors work together to help make the job effective and safe: good training, good teamwork, and good communications with the deck crews, both on the installation and on the supply boat. To provide a framework for the proper selection and training of offshore crane operators, the UK Department of Energy has published Training Guidance Note number 5. This is directed at the offshore operation of conventional jib cranes with a boom length in excess of 6 meters and a maximum safe working load of no more than 250 tons. Not everyone has the aptitude needed to do such a skilled and responsible job under difficult conditions.
We've talked about some of the factors that govern the safe working load of an offshore crane.
As well as being capable of absorbing their training, crane operators must be capable of understanding operating manuals and instructions. Furthermore, they must be able to cope with emergencies and working alone for long periods. The first part of the training for candidates with no proven ability as crane operators must consist of working offshore with an experienced and properly trained operator.
This graph shows the effect.
This is followed by a course covering both theoretical and practical aspects of crane operation. Most of this can be done onshore on similar equipment to that found offshore. However, Guidance Note number 5 stipulates that part of the training must be offshore. During this stage, there should be a practical assessment of the operator's level of performance. To be able to make the kind of decisions that will be needed, crane operators must understand how the crane works. Just simply being able to operate controls is not enough.
Swing around to the left now.
The responsibility for the crane and the loading lie with the crane operator, so it is vital that he understands the principles of slinging loads. Slings can be inadvertently overloaded because the wider the leg angle, the smaller the load they can support. Let's take 2 wire ropes, each capable of lifting half a ton. Together they can lift 1 ton. However, if used as a sling with a leg angle of 30 degrees, the safe working load is only 0.9 of a ton. If the angle increases to 60 degrees, the safe working load falls to 0.8. An angle of 90 degrees means a safe working load of 0.7 of a ton, and an angle of 120 degrees, the widest leg angle that should ever be used, the safe working load is only 0.5 of a ton. If the load is kept constant, the tension or effective strain on the rope increases. So, with a load of 1 ton and no leg angle, the tension is half a ton in each leg, the maximum safe load. At 120 degrees, the tension doubles to 1 ton in each leg, and so is greater than the safe working load for the ropes. The same principle can be applied to the crane itself. As the angle with the horizontal gets smaller, so does the safe working load. If a crane is described as a 100-ton crane, it can only lift this load when the boom is in the best possible position, that is, when it is fully raised. There is a dramatic decrease in the crane's safe working load as the boom is lowered towards the horizontal. As the radius increases, the boom chords are subject to greatly increased forces, and the safe working load reduces to 40 tons. It is important to realize that the crane and lifting gear are an integrated lifting system, which will have one safe working load for any given configuration of boom angle, slinging arrangement and sling leg angle. A further operating restriction is the weather, particularly the sea state. Picking up or setting down a load quickly in heavy seas can lead to severe shock loading, subjecting the crane and lifting gear to forces much greater than the weight of the load. This effect can be demonstrated in the classroom.
Here we have a static load of 2 kilos. If the load is picked up and dropped, it becomes a dynamic load, which is several times greater than the static load.
Offshore, these dynamic forces lead to shock loads which can cause enormous damage to cranes. The critical time is loading or backloading from a supply boat moving up and down in the sea. If a 5-ton load is winched off the deck at a speed of 1 metre per second, at the moment when the supply boat is dropping on the swell at 1 metre per second, the load will come onto the crane at 2 metres per second, resulting in a momentary shock load of 15 tons. At low boom angles, this will result in enormous forces on some components. Poor timing by the operator can result in even greater shock loads. If the supply boat moves out of radius, lifting must not be attempted, as the crane will be subjected to potentially destructive forces. It is this often invisible but always cumulative effect of enormous shock loads that can build up and lead to catastrophic failure of crane components and danger to life. Statistics show that crane operations are one of the most hazardous offshore activities, and that 25% of crane incidents involve main boom failure. Other likely causes of accidents are rope and whip line failures. Offshore, cranes must only be used for lifting. They must never be used to drag or pull a fixed load. There are many different makes and models of crane, but only 2 major types, the older mechanical kind and the more recently designed hydraulic types. The important thing is to train the operator on the type of crane that he will actually use offshore. In this hydraulic crane, the slewing control is operated by the left hand. If the lever is pushed to the right, the crane slews to the right. The same lever is used for booming. The operator pushes it away to boom down. He pulls it towards himself to boom up. The hoist control is operated by the right hand. It is pushed away for lowering. Pulling it in raises the hoist.
Right, John, we're going to see a demonstration here how to stop a load swinging.
Swinging loads are dangerous and must be brought under control as soon as possible. This is done by timing the travel of the boom so that the boom head is brought ahead of the load, above where it is going to reach on its swing.
So we've got a swinging load there.
This will greatly dampen down and may even stop the movement.
When the load passes the vertical...
To stop a large swing completely, it may need a second go. The wearing of hard hats inside crane cabs is not mandatory, and practices vary. Most modern cranes are fitted with equipment to help the operator. These devices can be either hydraulic or electrical. The Wayload Automatic Safe Load Indicator is one such device. It is hydraulic and needs regular calibration. The black pointer indicates the load being lifted, and the red bar below it indicates the maximum safe load at the specific boom angle. An amber light comes on when the maximum safe load is approached, and a red light, together with a horn or bell, when the safe load is reached. Other equipment includes wave compensation devices. These are set for the sea state and automatically lift the load from a ship at the moment it's at the top of the swell. This helps prevent shock loading. These devices and the others available are useful aids. However, it is essential that all operators know their crane's limitations in terms not only of its safe working loads, but also the maximum wave heights and wind speeds for safe operation. During their final practical assessment offshore, crane operators will be expected to show correct starting up and closing down procedures, good control technique, and a thorough understanding of potential dangers. Furthermore, they will have to know the operator maintenance procedures and safety instructions relevant to their cranes.
Okay, keep down on your line, dead slow.
Once he has successfully passed his practical assessment, it may be that an experienced operator will supervise him in the cab for his first few shifts. There is a wide variety of lifting tackle, but three main types of load are found offshore. Firstly, containers. These are often pre-slung and are the most common type of load. Secondly, loose loads. These need to be carefully secured and correctly slung so that there is no danger once the load is in the air. Finally, supporting hoses for bunkering.
Could you come astern, please?
This operation requires good communications, as the supply boats come in very close, and consequently the operator is usually working blind. For the crane operator, a supply boat assignment begins with a meeting with the deck supervisor and the deck crew. The pre-planning of crane operations is a prerequisite for all safe crane work. The deck supervisor will know from the manifest what weights and types of loads are expected. He will also know where they must be set down. The operator and supervisor must agree on the order of unloading and backloading before operations begin.
There's two skips on this boat. We haven't found a place yet for them, but possibly we can put them down M2 South. Will you be happy going to M2 South?
That's okay, yeah.
It's out of your vision.
There should always be a safety meeting with the deck crew. There is a constant rotation of personnel offshore, and it is important that every member of the team knows what is expected of them. Communications are vital, both radio or alternatively hand signals. There are established hand signals, but what is essential is that everyone understands the actual signals that will be used. There must be only one banksman at any time. He will give all the directions to the operator. In terms of radio communication, the operator must give his crew precise instructions as to what he wants to hear. It is vital to check that everyone knows where all the loads will be set down and picked up. It is essential that all pre-slung loads are thoroughly checked, and there will usually be loads that need to be prepared for backloading. All offshore cranes are subject to planned maintenance programs, and often it will be part of the operator's duty to ensure that this maintenance is being carried out. In addition, all cranes and lifting tackle must, by law, be inspected by an independent, competent person every 6 months. Colour coding is often used as a check of this system. Nevertheless, at the start of every shift, the operator must check his crane visually. He must take the time needed to inspect the boom for damage. Hoist blocks, wire ropes, limit switches and gauges must all be examined as detailed in the crane manual starting up procedure. The crane operator has a duty to do this, both for his own safety and the safety of those working around him, just as a pilot has a duty to check his aircraft before each flight. Both pilot and crane operator have the responsibility of moving objects through the air with the risk to life that this entails. Both are subject to the same problems of visibility and weather conditions. Both depend absolutely on their equipment working perfectly. Although the operator will have spoken to the previous operator, he checks the last shift report before starting up. Before attempting any lift, the operator should ensure that all air and lubricant gauges come up to their correct operating levels. Furthermore, he should satisfy himself that all the controls are working properly, including the limit switches. At all times during operation, he must be on the lookout for unexpected or inexplicable jolts. The operator will be the first person to know that something is wrong. It is essential to establish good radio communication with whoever is going to be in charge of the operation on the supply boat, usually the skipper.
There's 10B8 container column in the field for DP3. Is there any position you'd like it on your deck column?
Yeah, port side aft.
OK, will do.
Communications with him are as important as communications with the operator's own deck crew. During the lifting operation, the supply boat skipper will help get the timing right by telling the operator not to lift when a wave is coming. Before the operation begins, the crane operator must check that the boat's deck crew have inspected the slings on each load and also that the weights on his manifest are correct. Before each lift, the operator must be certain that the load is securely attached. If he is in doubt, he must ask the deck crew to check. The hook, load and boom head should be in a vertical line. If this is not possible, the operator must predict where the load is going to swing and be certain that it can be compensated for without threatening the deck crew. Even the slightest distance out of line will lead to a swing, and the crane operator must always be prepared to deal with this. If possible, he should try to use movement of the boom to stop any fore and aft swing of the load. Never attempt to lift a load out of radius. This will destabilize the crane and subject it to severe overloads. All slewing operations should be gentle to avoid side shocks caused by dynamic loading to the boom and slew gear. Gentle slewing will reduce the tendency of the load to swing. Severe load swings can affect the crane's stability. Always approach limits with caution and never use limit switches to stop a motion. Operators will need to become familiar with all the obstructions around their crane's working area. The crane operator should always take enough time to be certain that everything is right. He must not let the deck crew pressure him to go ahead. Experienced crews working together will make setting down the loads routine operations, provided that the radio and visual communications between the operator and the deck crews are good. At the end of every crane operation, the crane must be properly shut down. Never leave a load on the crane. Park the boom safely. Disengage the master clutch. Set the swing and boom brakes and other locking devices. put all controls in the off position and stop the prime mover. Working on floating installations, such as semi-submersibles, adds another variable movement to the crane operator's calculations, the angle of the boom varying with the swell. Here, experience of the particular installation is essential, as each has its own movement pattern. Whatever the circumstances, the crane operator should resist pressure to carry out any tasks that he considers dangerous. Crane operators should fully familiarize themselves with all emergency procedures.
Coming down your load now.
As well as knowing their crane operators must be aware of their legal obligations. The crane operator's task is a vital one. Installations rely on a certain and continuous supply of essentials to stay in operation. Over 90% of this arrives on the supply boats and is brought onto the installation by crane. The crane operator is thus an essential link between his installation and its supplies. His job requires skill and dexterity. He needs to be thoroughly familiar with his equipment and properly trained to ensure that at all times he carries out his operation
I can hear the demons call when they do what they do. And now I feel like taking off, find a place with a view. The pain is never gonna stop if it's controlling you. I know that time can heal it all, I just gotta get through. I just gotta get through, I just gotta get through. Cause I feel like taking off, find a place with a view. The pain is never gonna stop if it's controlling you. I know that time can heal it all, I just gotta get through. Sometimes I feel like all is lost, but I know it's not true. I wanna put up all my walls cause I'm not in the mood, but then I cut myself off from the rest of the room. I know that time can heal it all if you're patient and soon it can all be worth it.